Today's lesson, the first topic we're going to have is real versus nominal GDP. Okay, GDP measures total spending. If total spending increases, the economy is producing a larger output of goods and services. That's one reason why GDP would increase, because the quantity produced is more. Or the second reason would be goods and services are being sold at higher prices. Okay, so spending equals price times quantity, or if you think of it as in terms of the producer, that's revenue. Expenditures is when you're talking about the consumer, price times quantity, and revenue, if you're thinking about the producer, is price times quantity. Either way, if one of those two variables goes up, it's going to increase GDP. Okay, everybody have it? Raise your hand if you're still writing. Okay. So economists want to measure total quantity of goods and services produced that is not affected by changes in prices of those goods or services. So they use real GDP. All right. So they don't want to measure GDP based off of a change in price. They want to measure GDP based off the change in the amount produced. Okay. And so they use what is real GDP. Okay. If inflation is a factor in the change in GDP, then it's not real, right? It's nominal. Real GDP is based on the amount of the good that is produced. All right, look up when you're done writing so I know I can go on. Okay. All right, so definition of real GDP. It's the value of goods and services produced this year if we value those goods and services at prices that prevailed in some specific year in the past. Okay, again, so this is reflecting quantity produced. It's not reflecting a change in price. It's reflecting a change, increase or decrease in quantity produced. They pick a year to base prices on, and they use that year. Even if it's 2020, they may, they would, if they say we're going to use 2018 prices and the quantities from 2020 to determine the 2020 real GDP. Yes.
So what's the difference between real GDP and potential GDP?
Potential GDP has to do with the inputs available to produce things. 4 things that determine potential GDP: entrepreneurship, the capital stock, capital available, equipment, machineries, increase in that. And it has to do with human capital, the number of workers that are capable of filling the jobs. And there's one more, I'm forgetting what it was. Capital?
Land, labor, capital.
Yeah, land, labor, capital. And so land would be the fourth. Yeah. Yep. Those have to do with inputs.
Does that have to account for inflation then, or no?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. All right, yeah.
How do they determine when prices prevail?
They just pick a year. I'm not sure how they determine. That's a good question. How they determine what year to base real GDP on. I don't know if they do it every decade. 2010, 2020, whatever. But they have a year. I think they indicate when they give it a real GDP number, they're going to say based on the year 2010. Right. Nominal GDP. Production of goods and services valued at the current prices. Reflects both quantities and prices produced. Okay. So you use the current year prices to figure out nominal GDP.
And that doesn't mean using like today's prices in the past, right?
No, you don't use today's prices in the price. It's just year by year. Price times quantity year by year. That's nominal GDP. All right, so GDP deflator. The GDP deflator is a measure of the price level calculated as the ratio of nominal GDP to real GDP. It's a measure of the price level calculated as the ratio of nominal GDP to real GDP. So to calculate the GDP deflator, you're going to take nominal GDP divided by real GDP and multiply it times 100. So it's like a percentage. Okay. GDP deflator. Everybody have it? Raise your hand if you're still writing. Okay? All right. So we're going to do an example of calculating GDP and the GDP deflator on the chalkboard. Okay, so we did the top grossing movie. It was Gone with the Wind. Now we're going to do price indices. Okay, with price indices. I hope we can get through this. price indices, the definition of a price index. An index used to measure the cost of living. These monitor inflation, right? Another way to monitor inflation. Inflation is a situation when the economy's overall price level is rising. All right, so we use price indices to monitor inflation. All right, everybody have it? Okay. The Consumer Price Index, CPI. You probably have heard of this before. CPI. It's a measure of the overall cost of goods and services bought by a typical consumer, called the Cost of Living Index. All right. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, part of the Department of Labor, computes and reports the Consumer Price Index using prices of thousands of goods and services. So we can look, I've got so they make a basket. They make a basket of goods to be consistent from year to year. They use the same amount of goods, same basket of goods. We'll define that in a second. But let me show you here. So a typical basket of goods and services that they use to calculate CPI. You can see housing is by far the largest part of CPI. This is how a typical consumer divides his spending among various categories of goods and services. All right, so typically people spend 41% on housing, 16% on food and beverage, 17% on transportation. You got your car payment in there, education, Medicare, recreation, apparel, other goods and services. That's a typical basket of goods for a consumer. All right. All right, does everybody have this information? Raise your hand if you're still writing this down. Everybody's got it, okay. So, now we're going to do an example of calculating CPI. Okay, so one, you have to fix the basket. From year to year, you've got to use the same basket of goods. To determine the basket of goods is determined by surveying what a typical household consumes. Or consumer buys. All right? So we're going to, in our example, the example we're going to use hot dogs and hamburgers again. We'll just say that's all that the consumer consumes. It's hot dogs and hamburgers. All right. So the basket is going to be 4 hot dogs, 4 hot dogs, and 2 hamburgers. Okay, so the second step in calculating CPI is you have to find the prices. Okay, so we have year of 2001, 2002, and 2003, right? And then we have the price of hot dogs and the price of hamburgers. Our price of hot dogs, we have $1. In 2002, it's $2. 2003 is $3. For hamburgers, the price in 2001 is $2. In 2002, it's $3. In 2003, it's $4. All right. So we've got the fixed basket: 4 hot dogs, 2 hamburgers. These are the prices. Okay. Now we have to compute. The third step is compute the cost of the basket of goods each year. Okay. So in 2001, okay, we would have $1 per hot dog times the price of the amount times 4 hot dogs, right? Plus for hamburgers, we had $2 per hamburger times that we consume 2 hamburgers. So then we have we get $8. In 2002, we had $2 per hot dog, and we're using the same amount of hot dogs, 4 hot dogs, plus $3 per hamburger times 2 hamburgers equals $14. Right, in 2003, we've got. All right, so we had a few more definitions here. Inflation rate, the definition. Again, you can get these notes from the PowerPoint. It's in Canvas. The percentage change in the price index from the preceding year. So we saw that basket of goods that I showed you on ManQ, page 522. It gave you the percentage breakdown. Okay, now salary. They may ask you to do this to see how salary is affected by inflation. So if you want to calculate real wages, right? You take the CPI in the base year, divided by the CPI in the current year, and multiply by 100. That's going to give you your real wages. And then this other information.
Mason Miller, Macy Huff.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys can get the other information.
Mary Wilson, Emily Rake, Connor Hayden, Gabby Burgess, and Ava Riddle. All to the main office, please.